Let's do the news. Real men can't sleep. Real men do the news. I have had a busy day, and that's to put it mildly. I did fault lines this morning. And, when you do fault lines, you get up at like 5 in the morning, drive all the way to DC, do the show, and then come back. However, I have big news. And I think you'll like this big news because there are certain benefits to it. One, I was offered a position at Sputnik for my own show. This show will be out of DC, which would mean that we would have to move to DC. That's fine. And I am going to be working it with a gentleman named Bob. Now, I don't know what the show is going to be from the standpoint of the title. It will be politics. It will be news. It will be various segments. I would have an opening monologue, all that good stuff. But we are bumping heads together in regards to coming up with what it's going to look like. And that will be apparently in January. Second point. That show was always contingent on this show, meaning this was paramount. Like I was willing to give up that opportunity if it screwed with this opportunity. Because if I'm being honest, after 3 years of not necessarily subjugating myself to this kind of higher authority of a corporate body, I had qualms about whether or not I even wanted to do that. But the way I think about it, I love doing radio. And so if there was any way to get both, then I was going to try to get both. Well, I can get both. Every day at 2 p.m., apparently from 12 to 2, the show that I will be doing there would essentially be going through this channel. Meaning, the show essentially will be 12 to 2 every day, with additional shows that just take place in the evenings. It doesn't necessarily change my capacity to do shows in the evenings or anything else, but it has the extra bonus of being able to do a set show at a set time because people scream at me about doing that, saying we would love if you had a set time for the show. So the radio show would be a set time, 12 to 2. The regular show would essentially be me popping in like I typically do now. So, Tulsi, dual fatality on the CIA asset people. Yes, yeah. Well, not on Kamala. I don't think it was a fatality on Kamala. I want to talk about it. I am going to talk about it. But I just wanted to give a heads up, a news update. It's big news. We're excited. Like I said, it was always contingent upon me being able to do both. My strong feeling was this channel allows me to feed myself. And I don't necessarily want to give up my ability to feed myself. I always want to have the ability to say no. Meaning if it's something that runs afoul of my own kind of perspective of the world, I can always say no. I always have my own funding mechanism and everything else. So this show isn't going anywhere. If anything, this show is going to end up with more shows. I mean, the television show is going to be every day at the same time. All right. I want to get into the debate. That debate sucked. That debate was a train wreck. It was absolutely horrendous. I understand the significance of having 4 women moderators, I suppose, but what's the point of having 4 women moderators when they're horrible at their jobs? If you're going to start off a question with Medicare for all, the person to talk to is Sanders. If you are not going to start with Sanders and you're going to go to Warren, well, that's just short. This was the question that was asked of Warren. Warren was asked stupid questions the entire night. They asked Warren, they said, hey, would you increase the number of soldiers in the military? I suppose they're thinking that's a foreign policy question. It's not. She gets into ghastly Cold War stuff as she's talking about it. But that's a stupid question. I'm sorry. Pete Buttigieg, they asked him, they asked Andrew Yang, what would you say to Vladimir Putin if you won the election? I mean, like this Cold War stuff that kept getting stovepiped into the debates. Kamala Harris. First, let's go to Warren, and let me show you what I mean. This was the question they asked of Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kristen, welcome. Let's talk about Medicare for All. Senator Warren, you are running on Medicare for All. Democrats have been winning elections even in red states with a very different message on health care, protecting Obamacare. Democrats are divided on this issue. What do you say to voters who are worried that your position on Medicare for All could cost you critical votes?
Just so we're clear, Democrats are not divided on the issue. The Democrats overwhelmingly support Medicare for all. There may be a situation where Democrats think about that esoteric other and wondering whether or not they could sell it and win. But the issue is not whether they support it. They do support it. Let's keep going.
In the general election.
So I look out and I see tens of millions of Americans who are struggling to pay their medical.
Commanding.
Just so we're clear, the question that they gave to Warren was, hey, Democrats may be split on Medicare for all. So what do you say to those Democrats that may be worried about going too far in regards to health care? Now, what does this mean? This means that the main issue that availed and has plagued Warren gets ignored. That question allows a complete ignoring of the real issue with Medicare for all regarding Warren. Meaning Warren has been hit all week on an unworkable plan, and then she put out a Medicare for all transit plan, which was essentially Pete's plan. It was a public option. Pete Buttigieg sat here, gave his spill, and he says, well, in a transition to 3 years, because he realizes that her plan is so close to his own that he can reference her plan and talking about his own. MSNBC has allowed Warren to completely dodge all of the main issues with Warren involving healthcare that has taken place over the last 2 weeks and pretend as if she's for Medicare for all and argue about it, again, in theory. I don't really care about her answer. It doesn't matter. The question that should have been asked of Warren is, you put out a transit plan, and people are saying that that transit plan is ultimately just a public option because, politically speaking, it would be impossible to get what you want from the standpoint of Medicare for all for 3 years. Is this a plan designed to fail and to end up on a public option? Secondary, is it true that you just wanted a public option, but you didn't want to say that because you wanted to run on this notion of Medicare for all? Were you being disingenuous when you were pushing for Medicare for all when you knew that ultimately you were just going to end up on a public option? Those are just two. You can even go into the incentives of the bill that she put out or the plan that she put out. I guess my point is the information that the people needed to hear about was that Warren has just put out a transitory plan. Like it or dislike it, she did put out a transitory plan. The arguments and the critiques that are being leveled at her are the critiques that you should give her an opportunity to answer. Instead, you hide the ball and you give her the ability to pretend once again that she's for Medicare for all without answering any of the criticisms that go along with what is taking place. That's a horrible question. That's an outright horrible question. I want to also get into the question that was leveled at Tulsi Gabbard from Kamala Harris with a panel that essentially let Kamala Harris tee up on Gabbard. Gabbard answered this, fine. But I agree with Lee Stranahan on this. She should have hulked up. And I'll explain what I mean. Welcome, Soapbox After Dark. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. Kamala Harris, I think, to put it mildly, has an axe to grind. In fact, I would imagine she was somewhere with that, just wielding it, just hating him. Get that bitch when I get the chance. Why? Because top tier candidate Kamala Harris, right now, top tier, Emerson National Poll, 3%. You know what Gabbard is? Gabbard, the person who Kamala Harris acted like shouldn't have even been on the same stage, 2%. The top tier candidate is just 1 point away. Now, When I say desperate and when I say bitter, I don't mean those things because she's a woman. I mean those things because she is a person living through a particular experience that just so happens to be emblematic of those traits. Desperate in the sense that when you are polling at 3% in a national poll, and by the way, when you go into various states, Gabbard is ahead of Kamala Harris, top tier Kamala Harris in New Hampshire. When you are in a position where you are polling at 3%, your funding mechanism dries up. People don't like to give people money when they're not top tier, despite the fact that they call themselves top tier. Meaning you can call yourself whatever you want. Ultimately, the polling is what the polling is. And it is clear that you are not a top tier candidate. Not. Now, you were for a blistering moment in time, but that was ended by one Tulsi Gabbard. Meaning Tulsi Gabbard in 30 seconds ended Kamala Harris's presidential candidacy. And as she fell to earth, outright cratered, well, her funding mechanism is also drying up. Look at the reports that are coming out in Politico where people on her staff are pointing fingers. No, she did it. She did it. She's responsible for the failure of this campaign. That's not good. That's not good. When that happens, that's usually a boat that's sinking. A boat that's sinking. So, in those 2 points, A, she needs to have a breakout moment in this debate. She is desperate for a breakout moment. Because again, that's a funding issue. And 2, the person that did it is standing right here on stage with her. And boy, is she angry. Boy, is Kamala Harris angry. MSNBC allows her to tee up on Tulsi Gabbard. So I'm just going to let this play out. Let's hear it. This is 20... Yeah.
Party. What is the rot you see in the Democratic Party?
That our Democratic Party, unfortunately, is not the party that is of, by, and for the people. It is a party that has been and continues to be influenced by the foreign policy establishment in Washington.
And by the way, Tulsi Gabbard, the Democratic Party has attacked her relentlessly. So the perspective that she's taking here, yeah, it's her within the context of foreign policy, but she's become more adversarial towards the party because they have attacked her relentlessly. You can make an argument she's defending herself. The only person that groomed Tulsi Gabbard was the Democratic Party.
Washington, represented by Hillary Clinton and others' foreign policy, by the military-industrial complex and other greedy corporate interests. I'm running for president to be the Democratic nominee that rebuilds our Democratic Party, takes it out of their hands, and truly puts it in the hands of the people of this country, a party that actually hears the voices of Americans who are struggling all across this country, and puts it in the hands of veterans and fellow Americans who are calling for an end to this ongoing Bush, Clinton, Trump foreign policy doctrine of regime change wars, overthrowing dictators in other countries, needlessly sending my brothers and sisters in uniform into harm's way to fight in wars that actually undermine our national security and have cost us thousands of American lives. These are wars that have cost us as American taxpayers trillions of dollars since 9/11 alone, dollars that have come out of our pockets, out of our hospitals, out of our schools, out of our infrastructure needs. As president, I will end this foreign policy, end these regime change wars, work to end this new Cold War and arms race, and instead invest our hard-earned taxpayer dollars actually into serving the needs of the American people right here at home.
Senator Harris, any response?
Now, what do you think Kamala Harris is going to say? What do you think Kamala Harris is going to say? What Tulsi Gabbard said, I don't think anything is wrong. I mean, it's a little weird that she says Bush, Clinton, Trump. Clinton was never president, Tulsi. Obama was president. And those regime change wars that you're talking about was pushed by Obama. Whether you're talking about Libya or Syria, he was the person in charge of that. Now, people like Obama, so maybe she doesn't want to say Obama, and she's pissed off at Clinton because Clinton has been attacking her. So, fair enough. And that is Clinton's foreign policy. I mean, Clinton was more hawkish than Obama, and she apparently pushed him into the Libya fiasco. So, fair enough. Now, What is Kamala Harris going to say? What is Kamala Harris going to say? Tulsi Gabbard has effectively said, look, we need to change the way we go about our foreign policy. It is not suiting our national interests. It is only in the interest of a few corrupt plutocrats. But for the standpoint of Americans, not to mention our troops, we need to stop these wars. And she makes a secondary point. That is true. If we want to have anything for domestic policy, we can't spend $1 trillion on the military. Her point is, if we need to regime change in these wars and use the resources from those wars onto the domestic front. I would suspect she would even make the argument that unless you're talking about drawing down, you're not talking about anything for real in regards to our domestic policy. But I'm pretty sure top tier Kamala Harris is not going to let the fact that she's now sitting in single digits all over the country, she's not going to let that the person who ended her campaign intrude into what she says now when she's talking to that person. She's not going to let that happen at all. She's a top tier candidate.
Oh, sure. I think that it's unfortunate that we have someone on the stage who is attempting to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States, who during the Obama administration spent 4 years full-time on Fox News criticizing President Obama.
That's
who
ridiculous,
has spent full-time,
That's
who
ridiculous.
has spent full-time criticizing people on this stage as affiliated with the Democratic Party. When Donald Trump was elected, not even sworn in, buddied up to Steve Bannon to get a meeting with Donald Trump in the Trump Tower, fails to call a war criminal by what he is as a war criminal, and then spends full time during the course of this campaign, again, criticizing the Democratic Party. What we need on the stage in November is someone who has the ability to win. And by that, we need someone on that stage who has the ability to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump, and someone who has the ability to rebuild the Obama coalition and bring the party and the nation together. I believe I am that candidate.
Well, Emerson polling says otherwise. And it's not just Emerson. I can go all across the country in the various polling, and I would assure you, Ms. Harris, that polling would say otherwise. Not to mention, you didn't touch any of the substance of what Tulsi Gabbard was saying. Her point is we need to end these regime change wars. You went just on smear tactics. Oh, you went on Fox. You keep going on Fox. You were attacking Obama. You were doing this. You were doing that. Steve Bannon, by the way. Tulsi Gabbard did go to see Donald Trump. You know what she went to see Donald Trump for? Stop arming terrorists. Please stop arming terrorists. Obama was arming terrorists. Can you stop doing that? That's what she went to Trump for. That's why. That's why. That is consistent with what she's been saying from jump. Let's hear the response. But let's just be clear. That was unhinged and bitter. That was unhinged and bitter. Kamala Harris, who at one point had jumped into the third and fourth spot, is now literally polling at 3%. Tulsi Gabbard was entirely responsible for that shift from top tier to 3%. All of this, this unhingedness was just a person who was angry that their station had been effectively decapitated within 40 seconds, and they were incapable of doing anything to respond substantially. It is to note, when Tulsi Gabbard went after Kamala Harris, it was all real stuff. All of it was real. She just said, these are your flaws. These are your records. This is your record. The American public was aghast by it. She fell apart and imploded immediately. Every day that Kamala Harris sees Tulsi Gabbard on that debate stage, it has to burn. It has to burn. It has to burn. So all of that bile, all of that mendacity has everything to do with her losing her station. That's why it's unhinged. That's why it's not really anything real or policy driven or substantive. It's just anger and hatred, bitterness, desperation wrapped into one little package. Let's hear Gabbard respond. But let's be clear, that's sad. That's sad. I watched this and I was like, oh my God, what the fuck did I just see? And part of me was like, oh, she must be hurting. That's funny. She must be hurting. She must be hurting. People do that when they're hurt. People do that. People behave in that way when they're hurt. Let's hear Gabbard respond. Let's hear Gabbard respond. And I want to make one point about Gabbard's response. There's nothing wrong with her response. I just want to add one point to it.
Thank you, Senator. Congresswoman Gabbard, I'll give you a chance to respond.
What Senator Harris is doing is unfortunately continuing to traffic in lies and smears and innuendos because she cannot challenge the substance of the argument that I'm making, the leadership and the change that I'm seeking to bring in our foreign policy, which only makes me guess that she will, as president, continue the status quo, continue the Bush-Clinton-Trump foreign policy of regime change wars, which is deeply destructive. This is personal to me because I served in Iraq. I left my seat in the state legislature in Hawaii, volunteered to deploy to Iraq, where I served in a medical unit where every single day I saw the terribly high human cost of war. I take very seriously the responsibility that the president has to serve as commander-in-chief, to lead our armed forces, and to make sure always, no, I'm not going to put party interests first. I will put the interests of the American people above all else.
Thank you, Congresswoman. I want to briefly give Senator Harris a final second to respond.
Good response. Nothing wrong with that response. Substantive, calm. She starts off with a smile to indicate that, all right, motherfucker, I see what's going on. Now, Lee made the point of moral authority. And I got to be honest, I agree with him. Between the two of you, in this conversation right now, you are fighting on behalf of stopping people from being killed, stopping your fellow brethren from being sent to regime change wars, as you like to call it. I mean, for fuck's sake, they're your soldiers or soldiers out there now defending oil field that Trump essentially just stole the oil from. You are the moral authority in this argument. Be stout. Now, I don't mean like rip your shirt off and scream at Kamala Harris. I don't mean anything like that. But something else. It's so cerebral. It's so calm. It's so measured. It's, this is personal to me. All right, I need to see it. It needs to exude off of you. And oftentimes, Tulsi has this rapport that is so calm and so, it's not above it all. She takes a hit really well. She gives as good as she gets. But sometimes it's done from this cerebral place. That's not how people connect. I mean, you might have people meeting you mind to mind, but oftentimes it's something that comes off of the person in almost this felt sense way, or this like reading body language way that goes beyond what you're saying. And in this case, ribbing her. I went to see Donald Trump because I wanted to stop army terrorists, which is something that we were doing, and something that it seems like you yourself would probably continue to do. Like, ribbing is not bad. In fact, ribbing is pretty damn good, especially when somebody's coming at you unhinged. Unhinged. Put her down. That's my point. And do so, again, from a position that you accept that you are the moral authority in this very specific argument. Now, I don't mean that in the absolute sense. I just mean in the very specific sense of talking to her. She is effectively going after you for saying we need to stop these regime change wars and stop using terrorists to knock over government. That's not good for us. That's not good for our national security. And Kamala Harris is like, this person is on stage attacking Obama. What she was attacking was the fact that Obama was army terrorist. There's a difference in those things. Let's hear her finish this. Hopefully she feels better about herself now.
I believe that what our nation needs right now is a nominee who can speak to all people. I spent my entire career standing mostly in a courtroom speaking 5 words, Kamala Harris for the people. And it was about all the people regardless of their race, regardless of their gender, regardless of where they live geographically, regardless of the party with which they're registered to vote or the language their grandmother speaks. We need someone on this debate stage in November who has the ability to unify the country and to win the election. And I believe, again, I am that candidate.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Mr. Steyer, you have...
Just so we're clear, top tier candidate Kamala Harris doesn't even register from the standpoint of the pollster to show a head-to-head matchup between her and Donald Trump. That's sad. And again, the person who's screaming that she has what it takes to beat Trump is polling at 3% in the latest national poll from Emerson. I'm not buying it, Kamala. I'm not buying it. And you never engaged Gabbard's point. Just so we're clear, she never engaged Gabbard's point at all. This entire unhinged attack piece never touched her at all. Tulsi's dual fatality on CIA asset Pete and Kamala. Like, I didn't think her response to Kamala Harris was on point. It wasn't bad. And she gave as good as she got, especially when I listened to it again. But again, moral authority is something else. When Obama was going after Mitt Romney in that last debate on foreign policy, Obama was being a dick in that debate. Obama was being a dick in that debate because from the standpoint of foreign policy, people want to feel protected. And for whatever reason, being strong and aggressive is the thing that gets it across. You can do the same thing for anti-war. In fact, it should be very clear to you when you are responding to her that dripping off of every word, this restrained rage, is that our foreign policy is murdering people abroad. And people like you who put on the uniform with this notion of protecting the country is being used for geopolitical purposes. It's kind of Smedley Butler Wars of Racket stuff still going on, from the expropriation of resources in various lands of South America, or even over there where Trump says he's just going to steal the oil outright. That's atrocious foreign policy. And I tell you this, if you told the people who are putting on the uniform that we're going to use you to knock over governments and steal this, and we're going to use freedom and democracy and everything else, but ultimately that's what we're doing. We're doing this stuff for big corporations and for geopolitical strategic interests of the various people in power. They have a meeting of the minds. That's not why we put on a uniform. We need to stop that. Be the moral authority, even if that means being a little bit more aggressive than you are used to. It will go over well in trying to make that case, make that argument that people are dying. And yeah, I would do whatever I need to do in order to stop people from dying. You saw a bit of it when she went after Buttigieg. But I strongly suspect that Gabbard was sharpening her axe for Buttigieg because they had a back and forth once before that I think Buttigieg might have had the better end of that exchange. He didn't get the better end of this one. She practically called him a coward. It was awesome. It was an awesome hit. She went after his ass. That was awesome. Bernie or guillotine 2020. Typical Kamala attacking a woman of color. Bernie or guillotine for bought and paid for women moderators pushing corporate establishment talking points and promoting war profiteering just as good as men. Hashtag progress. The Democratic Party's foreign policy is terrifying. They're full-blown co-warriors at this point. Full-blown co-warriors. Even Yang is sounding like every other Democratic hack that's been on that stage in the way that he's been talking about what he's going to say to Putin and all this other stuff. It's utterly amazing. You're great, Jamarl. Would you not for Tulsi? Would I not for what? Bernie guillotine. Kamala not scary when she can't throw you in jail. Right. When she can't have troopers come to your house and go after you. You're great, Jamarl. Would you not? I think you're saying vote for Tulsi. No, I'm not voting for Tulsi. Bernie Sanders is my guy. I like Tulsi in a very specific point, and that's just foreign policy. Beyond that, by the same token, I think how they've treated her is so unfair. And I think part of my disdain for the Democratic Party in this stuff is the way that it's almost in this kind of religious zeal of attacking her. Like in their bubble, it's okay for them to say she's a Russian agent. She's a Putin puppet. She's a this, she's a that. She's an Assad toady. I mean, he said the most vile shit against her. The New York Times published a piece where they're attacking her for wearing a white outfit. No bullshit. Seriously. Steve Schmidt, the asshole that introduced Sarah Palin to our world. One of the journalists at one point, after seeing Sarah Palin in a debate, was aghast at how stupid she was. No bullshit. And on national television, he says he's flabbergasted, apoplectic even, is making the point like, John McCain has bought this woman, one 80-year-old man's heartbeat away from the presidency. And oh my God, he was pissed. He felt utterly betrayed that the campaign would do that. Guess who was heading that campaign? Steve Schmidt, the one that got on there and slandered Tulsi Gabbard. I couldn't believe that shit. Like, it's almost as if because she's out of their club, they could just say the most vilest of things and it's okay. Yeah, I don't find it to be that way. And I got to be honest, whether he realizes it or not, her jump in the polls is because there is a large contingent of Democrats that hate Democrats. And because that large contingent of Democrats hate Democrats, they see what she's doing and they approve. They approve. And I do too, if I'm being honest. Yes, I want her to say something on Bolivia that is dramatically problematic to me. I don't quite understand why. Is it that she's just against these kind of regime change wars from the standpoint of actual wars, and that CIA operations or backdoor operations between political leaders and countries where they want to steal resources is okay? That would be a problematic position for me, by the way. A regime change war doesn't necessarily have to be a war. They take the resources. Burning a guillotine. I like Cop Hillary made a point that the Democratic nominee needs to speak to all Americans regardless of political affiliation. And so did 30 seconds after using going on Fox News as a smear. Yeah, she did. What you don't know here is that Kamala Harris, after saying Tulsi Gabbard, oh, that bitch keep going on Fox News and she keeps attacking Obama. After smearing her relentlessly, what does Kamala Harris do? Kamala Harris immediately goes on Fox News. She immediately goes on Fox News. Right here. Right here. Right here. This is Kamala Harris talking to Fox News after smearing Tulsi Gabbard and complaining that Tulsi Gabbard keeps going on Fox News. How you living? How you living? How you living, dog? How you living? That's horrendous. That's horrendous. Anthony D'Angelo. Jamarl Thomas, can you do more videos on UFOs? Well, MacArthur, Louisiana. I did one yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, the day before. I was showing the paperwork and the scientific analysis of the Turkey UFO, making the point that if this is real, this needs to be valid. There needs to be more investigation into making sure the picture is real. Because if that picture is real, then oh my fucking God. Oh my God. Burning a guillotine. The establishment preemptively smearing Tulsi as a Russian agent because they fear her being Sanders' Secretary of State can't have an anti-war net position. That's interesting, right? And you know, Sanders has been knocking foreign policy out of the park recently. In this speech, he went into Israel and Palestine, essentially saying, look, Palestinians are people we need to acknowledge their right to live. And he's gone further, saying using the aid money that is going to Israel in order to influence the treatment and to try to come up with a deal. He's gone so far as to say we need to get our troops out of Afghanistan and the Middle East. And he warmed my fucking heart, came out and said this. Where is it, Sanders? Where is it? Because I've been moaning and bitching about this for months. We've stolen the oil. These are American forces standing around an oil field in Syria that we effectively, literally just stole the oil from. Trump said he likes oil. Who likes oil? Trump comes out and says, we engaged in a regime change war in Syria that was responsible for the deaths of 500,000 people, and that's on Obama's conscience. Despite going into Syria under false pretense, he then turns around and says, however, we're going to steal the oil. I like oil. That's what we're going to do. Now, I said this is outrageous. If you're going to impeach Trump for anything, impeach him for this. He literally, a president of the United States, just brazenly say he's stealing oil. And I was yelling, saying, how the hell is nobody else complaining about this? Sanders. Now, Tulsi came out and said something about this, so I gave her a shout out for that. But Sanders, it's outrageous that Trump deployed American troops into harm's way to guard Syrian oil wells. Why? He said he wants to make a deal with ExxonMobil to sell that oil. This is illegal and unconstitutional. We must rein him in and stop these endless wars. All right, make impeachment about that. I'll back it. He's stealing oil from another country. That's illegal by international law and by our own laws. That's illegal. He's not defending it from anybody. He has said himself that the ISIS thing is under control. Then, so why are we there? Why are we there? Bring him home. And he supposedly was bringing them home, but he left them there to steal oil. Now, truth of the matter is Syria has never been a really big oil producer, so that's more so to deprive it from the state itself, meaning stopping the state from having the resources that allows the state to persist itself. Something similar to them doing to Iran. But this is outrageous. They're just stealing the oil. Tulsi, credit to her for mentioning it first. Sorry, I meant vote. I love Tulsi. Nate Dogg, yeah, I feel you. I don't hate Tulsi. I like Tulsi, if that makes sense. But I wouldn't vote for her, even though I support her. I know that sounds weird. It's like, how can you do both? I think some of Tulsi's people would vote Sanders. So I understand that taking this particular tack hurts Sanders in an odd way of sorts. By the same token, I need Sanders to have space to the left on foreign policy. I think it's important. It's important to me. It goes beyond just the race. It goes into, I want real shit in the world, meaning an ideological shift. Tulsi gives Sanders space on the left, her policy positions. She's so far out in regards to this anti-war stuff that if Sanders comes out even halfway, that's far further than what anybody else is on that stage. He goes into foreign policy a lot in this particular race. And like I said, he pointing out the Israel thing, pointing out this issue with the Syrian oil. I mean, he's been doing, yes, the Bolivia thing. I mean, he's been calling that stuff out recently, even more so than Tulsi, oddly enough, even though she's supposed to be the foreign policy guru or foreign policy, anti-war candidate. She gives him space, just like Sanders gave Warren space. Or Sanders gave AOC space. She gives him space. I just hope he takes it. And some of the stuff, it looks like he is. So he comes out, they're stealing oil. That's illegal. We need to stop that. And in the debate, he comes out for the Israel-Palestine thing. Beforehand, he came out with the Bolivia thing all on his own. That wasn't anybody else giving him space. That was something he believes in. Keep in mind, he's been following South American politics for a while. Even when he was mayor, he was involved in politics of South America and trying to push back on this imperialistic project of the United States. So this is something that is near to him. And when he pushed on Evo, he didn't back away from it. He full-throatedly defended Evo, full-throatedly made the point that, look, this is a coup by any stretch of the imagination. This is a coup. Call a coup a coup. So I love that. Loved it. No complaints. Jamarl, you wouldn't vote for Tulsi? What the fuck, dude? Yeah, she's not my candidate. Why would I vote for somebody who's not my candidate? She does well on foreign policy, but the other stuff, you also have to trust the person that you're voting in, and I don't believe her. Anthony D'Angelo, Kamala has a shot at Pete. She didn't take it. Yeah, I got that video too. Don't misunderstand me. I think Tulsi is being legit on foreign policy stuff. I do think she wants to stop wars and those type of things. But domestic policy is not her wheelhouse. I don't know how she would get that stuff done. I don't even know if she even cares about it. I think her main focus is foreign policy. I want a little bit of both. Meaning I want Sanders to be able to say, yes, we want to bring our troops home. I want that. That's great to me. I want him to be able to stop the interventionist wars in South America, something she doesn't even mention. Like I know you guys love Tulsi. I don't love Tulsi. She's not my candidate. So I wouldn't vote for her. And it's not even an issue for me because I can be magnanimous as all can be because she's at 2%. So don't misunderstand me. You know, I can be magnanimous because she's not challenging Sanders yet. If it was ever a situation where she was challenging Sanders, then I would have to make a choice between one or the other. And the choice is clear for me. Yeah, she hasn't even mentioned Bolivia. She hasn't mentioned it at all. It's like, she's like, I'm thinking about it. It's like, how are you thinking about it? You can't call a coup? And how are you the foreign policy candidate if you can't recognize a coup when you see one? I mean, it's utterly astonishing. Jamarl, from a moral standpoint, isn't foreign policy more important than Medicare for all? No, it's not. Our foreign policy is a nightmare. That's why I love Tulsi. I understand that, but no, it's not. It's not. I'm sorry. The things that are pertinent to us are the things that are closest to us. And if you can have a situation where you have a candidate that gets both, or at the very least pays attention to both, I want the guy that pays attention to both. She does not. I understand she's pushing forward policies and the stuff of putting it on the left. But why do I need to trust a Tulsi Gabbard when a Bernie Sanders is in the race? And when that Sanders has been getting much more vocal on issues of foreign policy, and you can even give Tulsi credit for that if you want, fair enough, I don't particularly care. But he's been getting more vocal on issues of foreign policy, pulling back on the wars and all that stuff. If I can get both, I'll take both. And if I can get this with a little bit of this other one, I'll take that too. I trust him on these issues. She's an unknown quantity to me. I'll go with the one I trust, not the unknown quantity. I love y'all for being progressives. Excellent. Gardner on Burnett guillotine. The fact is, neither of them have room to maneuver, and each handles it in a different way. Sanders goes with the flow. Tulsi resists. Yes, to a certain degree. To a certain degree. But Garden, no, I don't agree with that. I mean, that doesn't even make sense. Like, if Bernie Sanders went with the flow, they wouldn't consider him an existential threat. I mean, that opinion is not held up by the evidence. I would say this, though. I agree with you from the standpoint of when things pop off. Tulsi seems more willing to fight back, but I strongly suspect that has everything to do with her having nothing to lose. It's like when Sanders was running in 2016, he had nothing to lose. He had no idea that he was going to win anything, so he just ran far and hard. This one is different. He has shit to lose, so his behavior is a little different. But I don't think that's, I do think if Tulsi Gabbard was Sanders in 2016 and she was cheated, would she have went along with it? I don't know. The reason why I say I don't know, we're looking back with hindsight. If Tulsi Gabbard is being cheated now, would she speak out? Oh, fuck yeah. She'll definitely speak out about it. She will bellyache and everything else. But her base allows her to do that, and she doesn't have a pathway to victory, at least not yet. So she's not hurt or injured by that. In fact, she may be even benefited by it. But that's not the same thing with Sanders. He has stuff to lose. That's true. He didn't fight back in 2016. But the notion of him going with the flow, I mean, the guy doesn't even take campaign finance. I guess the go with the flow thing, if you're talking about being a Democrat, that's something other than Sanders. You can say he doesn't go with the flow on everything. Fair enough. When he got cheated, he went with the flow on that shit. So I agree with you on that point. But you can't characterize a person, especially in the context of a party, based on something that happened in 1 year and within a context. I don't agree. Who are your number 2 and number 3 if you had to choose? Tulsi is my number 2. I don't know if there's a number 3. I don't like Warren. I greatly dislike Warren. I greatly dislike her. And in fact, it's gotten to the point where she's flagrantly dishonest. And the flagrantly dishonest thing bugs me. It fucks with me. It makes me think I don't know what the candidate is. Like, if you have a candidate that perpetually pretends to be somebody else, then who the fuck are you? Like, if I don't know who you are, how am I going to vote for you if I don't know who you are? And the moment that you pretend like you're for Medicare for all and then put out a policy proposal where you're not for Medicare for all, I find you dishonest. I find you just flagrantly dishonest. So I don't know if there is a 3. It's Sanders or Tulsi. Those are my only 2. The other ones, because everybody else is a hawk. Like, everybody else gets into this foreign policy nonsense, like where all of these guys are out. Did you see that debate? I mean, when these guys got on foreign policy, they were just Cold War hawks. All of them, with the exception of Sanders and Tulsi. When we were on the radio show today, the guy mentioned a Warren. And I was like, oh, yeah, fuck that, no. And Garland was like, like, lefties distrust her. I'm sorry, they just distrust her. They distrust her. Yeah, they just fundamentally distrust her. No. I don't have a third choice. It's damn sure not Yang. It's damn sure not Yang. I know some of you guys like Yang. I am not one of them. Yeah, I'm not one of them. I see Obama and Warren too. I think look, don't misunderstand me. I think if Warren would have ran an honest campaign, I think basically she would have said, I'm for a public option. That's fine. You can argue that point. Don't call it Medicare for all. Don't do that. Like, because at that point, if you're not going to live up to the thing that you're calling it, I'm going to be, people are going to find that dodgy. But if she would have said, I'm for a public option, I want to put in a wealth tax, I want to slap the banks. That is a campaign platform. The problem is that's not a pathway to win, because the people are going to say, well, Sanders, that's the same thing, and he's for all this other stuff. So she chose, consciously, I need to try to get Sanders supporters. That's the only way I win. And I also need to get the Clintonites. That's my path to victory. So I need to ape him. And if they believe that I'm close enough to him, then they may go my way. That's flagrantly dishonest campaign. Like, the campaign is dishonest on his face. I see that, and it aggravates me that it's so dishonest. It aggravates me. Tree, to be honest, Bernie and Tulsi were voting against Trump. Yeah, those two are the only ones I would consider. I mean, look, whatever my issues, from the standpoint of Tulsi stuff, I don't hate her as a candidate. I don't think she's flagrantly dishonest, so there's that part. She does the military part for me, which I consider her my sword on that stuff. I take great issue with the way she deals with Kashmir, and I take great issue with her not bringing up the Bolivia stuff. So those are qualms and those are problems for me. I suppose somebody would say nobody's perfect and they're not going to give you everything that you want. And again, this is contingent upon who you're going to 1 and 2, meaning if you don't get one, who's the second? Then yeah, it'd be Tulsi. I just don't think she can win. I just don't believe she can win. Nadine, well, Jamal, you have to admit that Warren is taking a smart cat. I don't doubt that. No, I agree with that. I agree with that. No, I'll get to it, I promise. No, Warren is. I've given her credit for that, by the way. Like, when I look at this through different lenses, right? There's the lens of, this is a game space, and the players in that game space have a clear objective of what they want to accomplish, and they take a tact in regards to trying to find a path to do it. So Tulsi would say, I'm the anti-war candidate. I think we need to stop these regime change wars. And her campaign will fluctuate in various places around that particular point. She wins or loses on that point. If something happens around the world, it may bring life into her campaign, assuming that the moderators, whatever, even ask a good question about foreign policy. But Warren is different. I mean, it's like, yes, I agree. That's her plan. That's her policy. And if you're in her campaign, you're like, yes, this is a great strategy. Sanders doesn't really say anything, so we can just go this route. So I don't ding her for political strategy. Don't misunderstand me. That's different. If you're asking me, is it a good political calculation for Warren to do this? The answer is yes. If you're asking me as a Sanders supporter, will I take a dark look at her for that? That answer is also yes. Meaning she loses me as somebody who would ever vote for her because I find what she's doing is flagrantly dishonest. And she's in a race where she is hurting my guy. She did not get into the race in 2016. She didn't support my guy in 2016. Now she jumps into the race in 2020 and dings him, hits him in the knees, cutting his support, because otherwise he would be winning this race. And runs in such a flagrantly dishonest way. As a Sanders supporter, I look at that and be like, God, that's flagrantly dishonest, and you're doing it in a way that hurts my guy. Yes, I'm going to be punitive towards you. You didn't vote for my guy back in 2016. You're not getting my vote now. I dislike her for it. It's like I dislike her for it. It goes beyond just like, okay, these guys are running a particular political campaign, etc., etc. It goes into, I end up disliking her because of it. Who are your 2 and 3 if you had to choose? Now, I don't have a 3. 2 is Tulsi. So I read that one. And there was one more. Bernie Guillotine. Who is your Sanders VP selection? Mine is Nina Turner. A lot of people love them some Nina Turner for the VP pick. That's a good question. G, who are your 2nd and 3rd? I answered that one. G, only Tulsi. There's no 3rd. Jamal, from a moral standpoint, isn't foreign policy more important than Medicare for all? I answered this one, but the moral thing, moral thing is dicey. I mean, morality is always still goalpost, and that goalpost is subjective. I don't want us killing people abroad. By the same token, I don't want people suffering here either. I just don't. If I can get something that lessens suffering on both counts, I'm going to take that, especially if I think it's a sure bet. Tulsi is an untested quantity for me. Sanders is not. He's been against the war stuff in South America for fucking ever. And now he's coming around to the anti-war stuff in the Middle East. And again, you can say that Tulsi pushed him to the left on it, but I kept saying I want her on that stage to give him space and push him to the left. They don't attack each other. However, it does seem that they're playing off of one another on this point. So I accept that. So yeah, she's my number 2. Not to mention, Tulsi stepped down in order to support Sanders. The other one didn't. So that in and of itself gets there's loyalty in that sense. It's just loyalty. I mean, she supported my guy. I support his. For VP, that's a good question. I don't know the VP. Honestly, a while ago, I might have said no, I wouldn't have said that. She's been letting me down big time recently. She's been lying. Nina Turner is not bad, but Nina Turner is the helm of Our Revolution, and you might want her as your lieutenant in Our Revolution. I don't know. I mean, I suppose it would be a woman, and I suppose it would be a minority in regards to, Hispanic, African American, something to that effect. But I don't know, and he needs to choose wisely because she needs to be strong and so forth. Yeah. No way Tulsi voted for Clinton Nasty. Clinton Nasty. That's funny. Yeah, Bernie or guillotine. I don't know that one, man. I'm not opposed to Turner. I like Turner. But I don't know if she would do it. I don't know if she would do it. Should we vote Democrat if not Bernie due to RBG's health? I can't answer that. I mean, look, I don't believe in the blue no matter who stuff. I personally believe there should be consequences for bad behavior. And I don't know how, I watched what they did on that Democratic debate stage, and that debate was horrendous. But when you got into issues of foreign policy, it was outright disgusting. I mean, when Warren made that thing about her family and people serving in the military, and it's some kind of a family honor or something, and she's talking about the Vietnam War, why do you want your family into the fucking Vietnam War? And why do you believe that that's some kind of bonding experience with your family? That's stuff utter nonsense. It's like, should we expand the military and increase the number of people in the military? I would imagine you expand or cut the military based upon the needs of the military, if that makes sense. It's not just an esoteric question. There are metrics, I would imagine, that you would consider and not just spitball it. And then to go into this weird thing of family thing. Even Yang's answer was outright horrendous. These guys are hawks. Kamala Harris, same thing. Hawk. All of these guys are hawks. Kamala Harris doesn't know what the fuck she is talking about on that stuff abroad. Joe Biden looks like he's out of his gourd. When he's talking about that foreign policy stuff. They seem like, how can you... I can't back any of those. So, RBG's health, I'm sorry, but the Democratic Party should have behaved better. I've said before that they would prefer Trump over Sanders, and I honestly mean that. The guy who is selling out stadiums, who has the most money, who is clearly all of the energy in the party belongs there. And they have 20 people in the race, and they still have more people getting into the race in order to stop him from getting there because they consider him essentially the destruction of the Democratic Party as the way the Democratic Party runs. They would prefer to lose to Trump. Their material needs are not hurt by Trump in office. Looking at this from a class standpoint, how on earth are the Democratic establishment, all of these guys are plutocrats, how are they hurt by Trump being in office? They may, belly-hoo about the policy stuff, and they may complain that they're not necessarily in power and all this other stuff, but they are not materially hurt in the same way that the public itself is materially hurt by him being in office. If Sanders got the nomination, they would be okay and would probably prefer him losing in order to put the left back for a generation. Again, they're not materially hurt by him losing. They would prefer a Trump over Sanders any day of the week and twice on Sundays. The party and the function or the organization that runs the party, third way Democrats. It's a think of it as a shift that took place in the party, and the hegemonic norm is that philosophy. What you saw on that debate stage, you saw a few people buck that trend. Yang just seems to be a regular Democrat at this point. Gabbard bucks that trend. Sanders bucks that trend. But I don't know anybody else that does. And when they get into foreign policy, they sound outright horrendous. It's not outright horrendous. Bernard Guillotine. Democrats shouldn't have gambled South Carolina in 2016 to start. Oh, yeah, I think I know what you mean. I think they assumed that Clinton was just going to sail to victory. And everything else was just, a fait accompli. So she didn't have to go to Wisconsin because, again, fait accompli. I can't answer that question for you. Because there are real world consequences to making that choice. I look at this stuff and I say there needs to be consequences for bad behavior. And if you put a Joe Biden in at a time like this, I think a vote for Biden is a vote for Trump. You're at a time where you're at a tipping point. I mean, and it's like we ran this race with Clinton in 2016. It's like, but let's run it with a dumber version of Clinton that just so happened to be a man. I don't think he beats Trump. And I understand that a lot of people do. I don't think he beats Trump. I really don't. Tulsi is best on Assange. Also, though, right? Yes, she is. Tulsi has gone so far as said this persecution of Assange needs to stop. I am unclear on what Sanders does for Assange. I saw him ask the question and run away. It's like, what? Running away? Now, for him, any notion of Assange brings up WikiLeaks, which revealed that he was being cheated by the Democratic Party. Like, so that stuff gets a little weird. Eddie's on that. She's been the strongest on Assange, though. I would love for her to be a Secretary of State. I fucking love it. That I would want. So maybe you're right. Maybe this is, this notion of trying to gut her chances of being Secretary of State. I think Jamal's high. He keeps rereading super chats. I'm not high. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm rereading super chats only to make sure I get all of them. Agree that Clintonites still control the party. Yes, would be very difficult to overcome these craven lunatics. Yes. Yeah. It's kind of like the Labour in the UK. Same thing. Centrist Democrats are contemptuous of the working class. Yes, but also of people representing the working class. They hate Sanders, just like the Blairites hate Labour. I mean, it really does work that way. Sanders, 1, Tulsi, 2, can't Warren be your 128th pick? I mean, do they have 128th people in the race? It's not that I think that Warren, I think she's serious about the banks, but that's it. I don't know anything else. She's tethered herself to Medicare for all, or at the very least, the public option. So do I think she would try to push for the public option? Yes. Do I think she would get it passed? I don't think that stuff gets passed without public will. And will she harness the public will in the same way that Sanders would? No, I don't think she will. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. And by the way, I would tell you if I was high. I see nothing wrong with it. It's my show. Do whatever I want. But this is not one of those days. It's a class struggle. Charlotte Roos, yes. Yes, it's class. I firmly believe that the party dynamic is an issue of class. And so, yes, the plutocrats would prefer to win, but they want to win on their terms. If it's between Sanders winning, well, they would use fascists, just like they used fascists in Bolivia, to stop the socialists. If Sanders wins, they will try to gum up the works, just like they did in FDR's time frame when they were trying to stop him from passing those policies. They will try to stop him all along the way. You must understand, if Sanders is successful, then what does it mean for Obama? And what does it mean for Clinton? What does it mean for all of these line of Democrats that said the way we did politics is incrementalism? That's all we can do. It must be this way. It has to be this way. That's all you can do. This is the best you can get. And this guy gets in office and shows you that's not true. Not only did I not take their money, I also passed the policy I said I was going to pass. It destroys any notion of the Democratic Party, from the standpoint of legitimacy, meaning these third-way Democrats. But also, a new crop of people will use that as a touchstone in the same way that people use FDR as a touchstone. The fact that FDR existed as a blip in time shows people that that's possible. And they hate it. They hate it. They hate it. They utterly hate it. Totally hate it. Ellen dances with George W. Bush. Bernie dances with Hillary Clinton. Bernie never danced with Hillary Clinton. Sean C. They won't support him anyway, though, so he might as well. Yeah, I don't think they're going to support him anyway. They hate his guts. Bernie guillotine. Jamarl can't get weed smuggled into Russian prison cell due to the cement walls being too thick to dig through. Oh, that's funny. That's funny. That's funny. Right here. All right, this is fair. Captain Navi. Yes, Sanders gets all the passes in the world to call Maduro a dictator, but Tulsi silence on something that was fucking happening is deafening. Yes, it is. I mean, look, I don't understand the dodge, personally. Like, ultimately, you can make a point that says Sanders should have been stronger in regards to his talk about Maduro. But be honest with the entirety of the statement, right? Maduro's a dictator. He's a horrible guy. He doesn't wash his hands. However, we should not be invading and getting involved in that territory. He does a two-step on that stuff. It's not as strong as I like. I don't like the Maduro's a dictator and all that stuff. But it is a two-step. At the very least, own it. That it's not just this kind of singular thing where he's acting as if this kind of regime change stuff. On the second point, yes. If the person who is very keen on a regime change platform cannot recognize an actual regime change in progress, that's a problematic position. I don't know what Sanders has to do with that. I don't know what Sanders has to do with that. I'm just saying. I don't quite agree, Jamal. It helps Bernie, the only real one funded by populists. We see this in the election where other candidates tried to copy him but couldn't follow. So I think maybe that's the thing with Warren, right? She seemed to have hit a brick on this. Jamal, my top three: Bernie, Tulsi, Yang. I'll take the 1,000 months, $1,000, or $1,000, bro. $1,000, bro. All the money we give the candidates goes to corrupt media. Isn't that some shit? Like, they run ads. Like, all of that money goes to those candidates. They spend $1 billion, and then a large sum of that money is just dumped into media. It's like a bonanza. It's like a bonanza. Sean C., I disagree with you. He doesn't have a chance because he's being cheated by the system and people won't vote for their own best interests. If you're not going to fight for your freedoms, why are you here? See, I disagree with that. I massively disagree with that. I do not think pessimism is a survival trait. And going into a contest where you think you're going to lose. Look, I accepted that there were going to be some chess matches I was going to lose. I used to take a position, but I still take the position that I'm not going to lose. I think you need to have all sorts of plans in place and everything else. But their reaction to him, again, belies the comment. I mean, it's one thing if the fix was in, then I don't necessarily think they'd be freaking the fuck out in the way they're freaking out. I do not think, I think they would try to ding him. I think they would try to screw him over with superdelegates. I think they would try to use all media to black him out. I think all that stuff is true. The cheat outright card is problematic just because of the fact they cheated him in 2016. So, but we'll see. I mean, you might be right. You might end up being right. We will see. Jay Ville, Tulsi has been ill for a week, hasn't spoken on much of anything. She did look bad in that video. When she came on the debate stage, my wife was like, what's wrong with her? She looks off. So she looked like she was having trouble. Bernie Guillotine, Warren came out on Twitter super pissed off that Ellen was dancing with GWB. I'm the only one that's supposed to be dancing with dancing with the wolves. She's trying to ape his position on that. All right, I'm going to end this. This video was supposed to be like 15 minutes, and we've gone over an hour. Like, share, subscribe. I don't hate Tulsi, guys. I mean, and I know I may criticize her, but I think my criticism is always fair. Clearly, the Bolivia thing was big to me, and so it was a big deal to me that she didn't say anything about it. When Sanders was coming out with the dictator stuff, if you look back over those videos, I also hit Sanders for doing that, making the point that, you know, should not give ground on this where you allow them to create the supposition that because he's a bad man, it's okay to do XYZ. So I'm consistent with it. You're acting like I gave him a pass when that shit came out. I did not. Look back at those videos. I've been consistent. And the Bolivia stuff, if you can't call a coup, then I don't understand the foreign policy position. I don't get it. It becomes weird to me. I don't like these regime change wars, okay? But there's a coup going on, but I can't call it a coup. What? What do you mean? Even the OAS that was instrumental in that coup calls it a coup. I don't understand where Tulsi's problem is. But yeah, I find that to be a problematic position, but it's what it is. People are complicated. Like, share, subscribe. Warren's glass jaw will cause her to implode. Fine by me. Just plain annoying. So I think that, I think the Medicare for All stuff was that. But what did they do in the debate? They hid that. Like, if you notice, Warren, the Medicare for All answer question only came up in the context of how do you convince other Democrats that are sketchy on Medicare for All? Not your Medicare for All plan is unworkable, and it doesn't seem that you're for Medicare for All. This seems like Pete's plan, and how are you going to get this thing passed in 3 years after you get a new Congress? That stuff never came up. Which would be the operative thing to come up. For fuck's sake, you need to explain to the people what's wrong. What's wrong? All right. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks all.